Welcome to Luton Geeks Unplugged. You'll see and hopefully see and hear from another guest. But before we introduce her, Jamie, how are you?
Yeah, I'm not bad, mate. I'm not bad. Been busy.
Was it interesting week last week? This is a rearranged recording. I mean, it was one of those where everyone felt a little bit like no one wanted to put their hand up and say, can we rearrange that recording? And I think one of us said, yeah. And then the messages went round and then we rearranged it. I think everyone had a shit week last week. So we're back. We're in middle of July, all based in the UK. And we're recording today now instead. And it feels a bit better than last week. My headspace wasn't right last week. I don't know about you, Jamie.
No, I'm going through the woes of buying a new house, and that's mentally breaking me each day. I think it's to see what someone's threshold is now. I think it's like a social test. But yeah, no, it's good that we're back. I like the fact that you're referencing that we're mid-July, like so if someone sees this for prosperity in 20 years, they'll know.
This is true. Mid-July 2023. Just to timestamp it. Why not?
Yeah.
And in the UK, it's not summer, but it appears that the rest of the world is suffering from global warming and having a serious summer, 40 degrees and 50 degrees in the US as well. But over here, it's rained most of the morning where I am. We are in Britain, so it's to be expected, unfortunately.
Yeah, it is. I thrive in this weather. This is the weather I thrive in. I don't burn. It's not too cold. And I love it. I can sleep.
Ample mediocrity is what
that's what I settle for in life. That's my life. My ample mediocrity.
Anyone looking to employ Jamie in the next 6 months, he's okay with mediocrity. It's fine.
I love it. That's where I thrive.
So today's conversation's around designing and engaging content. And I'll hand over to Jamie to help introduce our guest so you don't hear us drone on. Yeah,
I'm really delighted to welcome Tajha. Me and Tajha worked for a period of time at EE. So I'd say one of the biggest telecom companies in the UK. Cross paths, I really respected how Tajha worked. We also built a budding relationship on Words with Friends. Tajha's going to now bow our head at that point because I think the records will show, and Tajha works in content, but I only lost one game in our whole history of Words with Friends. One game. So I had to get that in there, Tajha. But yes, so welcome.
You have to always remind me.
Yeah. That's our relationship for eternity. So welcome to you, Tajha. So great to have you on.
Thank you guys for having me. Feel it's a pleasure to be part of this.
So tell us a bit about yourself and Tajha, because you've had, like me, in a sense, of really interesting sort of career.
Yeah, so I actually started in journalism, did a journalism with sociology degree, was pretty much like, I want to be a journalist, did loads of internships at magazines, like ITV, all these different places. And then I managed to, it's like, you get out of uni, can't like find a job, but eventually managed to actually get like a year-long sort of like internship contract at a magazine. And just there, it wasn't just even just how brutal it was. I just realized it wasn't for me. Just like giving my whole life to writing about gossip. It could have been a type of journalism, but it was just like the time you had to put into it, I just didn't find it rewarding. So I found myself going into, I saw somebody I studied with talking about copywriting and looking for somebody to help. So I was like, okay, well, I can write. So I started doing some stuff with her for like a small travel company. And then I ended up like leaving that internship contract and then ended up working at Thomas Cook for a while as a contractor, but then became full-time after about 3 or 6 months. And then after Thomas Cook, decided I needed a bit of a change because they were kind of moving away from needing so much copywriting and using agencies. I went to EE where me and Jamie met. And then, my role dramatically kind of changed into like, not so much copywriting, but what you started hearing going around as content design UX writing a bit. And then there was a reorg where they were deciding to make everybody content designers, but I decided to anyway move on at that point. So I went to Sky. I was there as like a content manager, UX writer, so doing the same sort of things, but leading a whole project for a mobile website. Well, for the Sky Mobile website re-platform, they were just doing it all over again. So I led that, and then after that, was there during the lockdown times, and I decided to move to an agency, see what it's like. Agency wasn't really for me. I think I stuck it out there for about, I think just about a year as a content strategist. Same thing, content strategist, UX writer still, because it required a bit of all of that. Yeah, so, and then after that, went to Experian for a little bit. And then, yeah, now at Spotify. So, yeah, I've definitely gone through a journey.
And that's like, I'm going to like touch on straight away here. So you qualified as a journalist, but you now work with digital content. Is there, and this is for listeners, is there a significant difference? Because to someone who hasn't worked it, you might think, well, it's just words. And that's not to like to debunk it. It's more, I want to understand, is there a significant difference there?
There is a difference. I guess, like, in terms of like journalism, you are I guess the premise is similar, as in like you are writing something to help people, whether it's like talking about, like, in a way you're helping somebody, if you're talking about gossip, because it might be something they're into, or you could be, you know, trying to sell a product. Like, you have to be a good writer at the end of the day. That's the way I see it. You have to understand how to write, be good with your spelling, your punctuation, and yeah, I think that's something that's similar, but it is different in terms of, like, you know, the way the pace is completely different. Obviously with what I do now, you've got to have like a design thinking background. Like, it's important to understand the design process, to be able to work with designers, but also be able to understand the product, where you would work with product managers, work with the engineering, whereas with journalism, there's nothing like that. Journalism, it's literally, you're either sourcing stuff through like looking online to see what's happening, sometimes like having to like stalk like Instagram, or like before then, really Instagram wasn't so much of a thing, but like, you know, when I was doing it, like look at like maybe where some celebrities are going. That was my experience of more being on the celebrity side, but you had to do a lot of like hands-on research, or sometimes get out there as well, a lot. So yeah, and that's probably what I didn't really love so much, is that I had to do a lot of getting out there, and you had to be the first. Like, you had to always be the first, and it was a lot of pressure considering how much you got paid as well.
No, and like you sort of said about it, and you mentioned their sort of design element, which I can imagine journalism, they kind of have a template of a page, whereas when you're working with digital products, no two journeys or pages are going to be the same for you. Again, you then have to think, how's that going to work with the iconography and imagery that's on the page and stuff. So I can imagine that's where, again, you start to see those differences. And then this touches into the sort of next thing, where I remember your discipline. I remember it being referred to as copywriters, and that was it. Is like, that's what content do. They're just copywriters, and I think it's a disservice. And I've always sort of said to you, like, I still reach out to you sometimes. I think I reached out to you towards the end of last year, like, does this look right? Because I think it's so critical how we communicate with our user, the language we use. But since then, the world of content has gone through, like, I would say, like a revolution, and the understanding of it. And you've been a content designer, you've been a content strategist, and now a UX writer. How have you found that? And do you think the day-to-day mechanics has changed with that?
The thing is, it's funny, and this is a debate I have a lot with anybody who works in the industry. All them roles are necessary. They're all the same, really. Like, they all of them have to be like involve research. All of them involve like having some sort of guidelines or creating a guideline, being able to, you know, work with tone of voice, sculpt tone of voice. So when been asked this question a few times, and I say they're all necessarily the same jobs because they all have the same thing. Like you hear content strategy and you think, oh, it's very strategy based, but there is sometimes an element of writing in it as well, where you actually are. So like when I was doing content strategy, mainly that was as my title as well. You're thinking like, it's mainly going to be like the strategy side. Like I'm going to help, especially in the environment I was doing at an agency, I'm going to help like, clients like come up with a strategy for how they improve their content. I'm going to help them come up with a guideline so they can follow and teach their teams how to actually write. But then I actually had to sometimes do the writing too, to actually show them, okay, this is how it should be. This is the result at the end of it. Content design, UX writing, I say that they exactly are the same thing. Like UX writing, you could argue, is probably, I think it's meant to be known as maybe not so much like research led. I've seen different things where people say, oh, a content designer, like they work more with research rather than a UX writer, but it's basically the same. We all work with research. There's just so many different titles out there that make it seem like we're all doing different things, but it's all one really. Like the content designer is the same as a UX writer. A content strategist is the same thing. Like some people might argue and say I'm wrong, but maybe it's because I've been called all titles. I've seen how it all includes the same stuff. So nothing. No, I wouldn't say the day-to-day has changed in any of them really. I guess the only difference maybe is with the content strategy role, I guess, there was a lot more focus on strategy, and I had to spend a lot more time really doing documentation. Whereas like in my role now as a UX writer, content designer, and even previously before, the documentation side was kind of just like how as you go on while you're actually doing getting nitty gritty work, and you're working with the designer, you're working with the product manager and the engineering team. So
do you think some of this stems from the fact that enterprises, organizations, they just never had this role? These jobs never existed. And I never forget working, like studying tech. I'm very boring. Everyone knows I study computer science. But one of my lecturers said to me, God bless him, his soul, Kevin Large, he died unfortunately, but he said to me, you'll have a job at some point that isn't created right now. And to me, I couldn't get my head around that. I was like, what? But now we're seeing literally the birth of it, a birth of roles, and the organization not quite knowing what that looks like, what that job or department looks like. And they're like, but we just need you to do some stuff. And then you end up going, okay, you've given me this role of strategist, but actually I'm doing loads of other stuff, not just strategizing about your content. And I think some of that is the birth of digital has happened in such a short amount of time. Historically, evolutions happen over decades. They're happening in single years, right? Like you just said, you started doing something and then suddenly we're pivoting, or I'm doing two things at the same time. Have you seen that a lot if you look back?
I think generally with content, I think with it still being such a new, you can say it's still a pretty new discipline. And I think that's why like there has been so much like confusion about like what does a content designer, content strategist, UX writer do. And some companies will say, oh, we need this, but then when they actually get somebody in the role, then they realize, oh, it's actually more than this. It's depending on what that person's experience is, which has happened to me. Like I'll get in there and I'll be like, oh, well, this requires a bit more of this, or the ask changes because they realize, okay, all right, now we actually need someone to write.
Yeah.
Oh, but you write as well because you're a writer too, I guess. So yeah, you did the writing too.
Do you think that's why the smaller businesses, like the startups, small is probably the wrong word, the startups or the younger organizations are better at adapting for it? And even if you look at content in general, content creators on social media platforms because they're just happy to try it and see what happens, or do something it fail, rather than these big, you spoke about EE, Sky, big organizations that have all these policies and it has to go through X chains of people for approval. Do you find that those, Spotify, are really good at being nimble and adapting?
Yeah, I would think the smaller, are a lot better. I think especially because I've come from a mix, like I've worked with like more bigger companies and the more older ones as well, like EEBT, where you can see they're transitioning and, you know, originally being brought in as a senior copywriter, but then they're like, oh wait, content design is the thing. We should really change them to content designers. And but they don't really have the structure or the team structures to actually make that person really be working in a content design environment. And that's kind of why I fueled that kind of fueled my decision also to leave at that time as well, because when they decided they were going to change our roles to that too, I remember like reading more into content design, because I was like, well, I am basically doing content design, but for me to really grow and really like get the full-on experience as I feel a content designer and UX writer should have, the team structure there wouldn't really facilitate that. The way I'll be working, that's not going to allow me to actually like really fulfill the role of a content designer. But you find that a lot of like, because it's the in title, the in role, they're just going to put that there, but they might not necessarily have the structure. They might not necessarily even have the type of work to actually, you know, make that person feel like they actually are doing that role itself.
And sorry, this is literally popped into my head because you talked about tone of voice. As we are now going to an age where people use emojis, symbols, abbreviate everything, and then there's the need to go make things snappy. People don't like to read as much. It's fascinating in that you work with content, but then you have to try and streamline what you're writing. Is that like a real challenge as well? Going from, well, I want to write and really communicate. So no, it's got to be 2 lines. We've got to say a whole journey in 2 lines. That's it. Do it.
It is a massive challenge, and I would say that's the most challenging part of my role. And yeah, I've experienced it as a copywriter, and I experience it even more as like a content designer, UX writer. Like you get that challenge a lot where people don't like that. You want to really communicate something, and you're like, oh, like I really think it should be this amount of words. We should use. Oh, but it's too many words. Like, can you not make it shorter? And I'm like, but we need to communicate, especially error messages as well, or like a confirmation dialogue or something like that. Like, we really need to communicate, in my opinion, like what is going to happen, what the result of this is going to be if that user taps okay, for example. And they'll be like, no, but it needs to be shorter. We need to it should just be one line. And like, but that's not going to happen. It can't happen. Like, especially if you know we've got the user research. And that is one thing I do like a lot of the time about the role I have, is even if people do object to your approach, user feedback is always there. If it hasn't been done well, it's not great, but it usually is always there for you to be like, well, our users have said, or we've seen from before, or in this test, it didn't work. So we need to do something like this. We need to iterate on this and make this better. So it is annoying when you do get that, but I do like the fact that I can always like refer to research if it has already been done, or even my own experience as well, to say like, well, this is what we know will work. So that's why I've gone with this.
You can't beat user feedback. Everyone's got an opinion, but the opinions of your customer is normally king.
Yeah.
Honestly, I even had like somebody I don't like. Hopefully they won't really realise I'm referring to them, but it's a relevant example, because they were literally like, oh, can you not make this shorter? Like, I don't know if this makes sense as well. And I was like, but you know, what makes you think, like, because I think the way they phrased it was like, oh, I don't think this will make sense to our users. It seems a bit disjointed. And I was like, but do we have the research to back it up? No, but that's just my opinion. And I was like, well.
Yeah. And language is, I might say a different word to how you want to say communicate. Like that's all in the eye of the beholder, I would say. That, like, I use slang words that if I went up north, I
or
can
a
tell you
different
now.
continent,
Yeah.
Spotify, right, or Sky.
Yeah,
It's global. You
Yeah.
can't use a local dialect if you're talking about content writing or whatever it may be, or at least adapt that dialect.
Exactly, and it goes back to the point you made earlier, Jamie. Like, you know, people say like it's just words, but it's not just words. There's so much thinking that goes into it. You know, you have to, like, you know, 2 words on the screen sometimes can be so hard to figure out what is the right word to use, because there's so much more that goes into it than just saying, oh yeah, I'm just gonna put these 2 words together. That sounds good. You've got to look at this research. You've really got to understand who you're writing for to be able to write the right thing. So yeah,
my favorite example of this is I'll cut a long story short. There was a Google UX leader, and he'd just been dumped into Google, and his opinion was, and it was his opinion, that certain blue on a certain page works for the Google search, and Google, the engineering and the product managers were like, well, let's let the data decide. Let's release the colors over a period of time and see which one's best, because we have no feedback or data on it. And his opinion was, no, I want that color. And they clashed heads to the point where this guy quit, because the engineering and product managers were effectively just constantly getting feedback and adapting the UX according to the feedback they were getting, which really wound some, you know, people who won't go with an opinion only up, which is very dangerous, I think, because your opinion's your opinion, not everyone else's opinion.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And again, like you say about that sort of 2 words, I've watched so many rounds of user testing, and they'll say that, you know, why did you do that? Because that's what them words said me to do. You're like, okay, there you go. So people do still read. I do think there's this misconception from some people now, people don't read. No, they don't want War and Peace on a page, but they do need some guidance. They do, like, and that's where I think language is key.
Exactly, and we're designing experiences to help people actually do something, isn't it? So, you know, we're doing this, we've done research to understand what their actual needs are. We should try our best to actually fulfill those needs.
Yeah, you know? And convey it in an easy and understandable way.
Exactly, and if you think it's too many words, well, these might be the actual words they need to see, you know?
That is the phrase, isn't it? Can you make it short?
Yeah, but you know, it's funny. Well, when you get that comment as well, it's like, well, remember, to you like, you probably understand this.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, not everybody understands this. Like,
you're in it every day.
You're in it every day. You know the product like the back of your hand. So of course, like, that's too many words for you. But for them, some people, you know, they're just getting used to some products themselves, or they've never used anything like it before. You know, especially, you know, the area I currently work in Spotify at the moment is more for, you know, for emerging markets, which is specifically the experiences I work on. So a lot of the time you've got to think about it like, this is a market, these are markets that they may not be, you know, they may not have experienced a product like this before, an experience like this before, or, you know, you've got to think so much more about the language. So for somebody, it might be like, for somebody who works on it, it thinks, oh yeah, we don't need to communicate that much, but you might actually need to, because this is new to them, you know, or when it gets translated as well, which a lot of the time I deal with too, you know, it might mean something completely different.
Oh, the tone might be wrong or something.
Yeah, the tone might be completely wrong. So it is very, very, I've learned a lot in this industry, 100%.
Moving on, talking about learning a lot. You've obviously, from a career perspective, covered a wide range of industries. Have you seen any consistent behaviours or big differences? Is there anything in the role where I've seen this before? This has come up before. Feedback seems to be a big one, clearly. But is there anything where different industries do something slightly different? Spotify's a unique one, although they're listed probably as a digital business. There would be a digital business, I guess. It's music content, but is there any similarities that you can see across all of them, or anything that's been vastly different?
So would you say, like, in regard to like how people work with me, or just generally like their working structure and stuff like that?
From my point of view, it's just like in terms of how they land that digital experience. So, like, is there codes and conventions as to how you might communicate at Spotify? You'd be like, actually, I can't believe this was exactly how I would have communicated to my users' experience. Totally two different sort of industries, and user types, you would imagine.
Yeah, I feel like everybody's got the same sort of approach. I think especially if they've got people in what we say in the digital industry now, they've got everybody from each role that we would say define like a digital team now. I haven't seen any difference in how they approach things or how they execute and bring out an experience. I guess the only thing, when I think back, I'm just trying to think. I don't feel like I've seen massive differences.
No. Have you had any wow moments? Anyone where you've moved and then you've gone, wow, that's cool. That's a different way of approaching.
Or wow,
something.
it's bad.
Or wow, it's bad. Yeah.
Because I can say I've done that in product. I can definitely say that.
Oh yeah, I have had that, but I don't even. I don't want to name any companies, but yeah, I think when I had a recent stint of going back to one company and seeing how they were still doing things, I was like, yeah, wow.
And nothing had moved on. It was like the same, or
it was the same. It could have maybe just been the team I was working in, but I was just like, oh, this is not good.
So that's the definition of that's the definition of insanity, isn't it?
Yes.
Doing the same thing and expecting different results. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, sometimes you think with time, innit, people improve. Things improve. You know, especially when you see such good things on the social media. I don't know if you believe everything you see on social media, but you see such good things and you're thinking like, you know, this seems like they're moving in the right direction. But yeah, I saw different. But you know, it may have been because I was at a different level at that time as well, where I've already like been more, you know, used to working with, you know, teams maybe with a bit more experience at that time.
Yeah.
So it's like going back and seeing that, I was like just a bit like shocked that still doing things in the exact same way. Like, ooh.
And then the last question for me before we get on to the fun stuff is about the importance of content, especially as companies go digital. Like, how important is content? Like, one of my examples is going to be a bit crazy. So anyone that's watching this outside of the UK, there is a supermarket called Aldi, and they do. How do I phrase this without getting sued? They do. They create content that is provocative to their competitors, as they copycat. I think that's fair. Is that am I going to get killed? They copycat a lot of products to the point where another reputable supermarket in the UK was suing over a chocolate cake. Caterpillar, correct.
That was funny, by the way.
But the content that is created and engaging felt very natural and very funny and honest from the creators of that content. From a UX copywriting perspective, it felt very real, like what other people were thinking, like how ridiculous you're suing over a chocolate cake. How do the importance of content, like you must have seen the change from like EE all the way, like, and all those organizations who work through there. The barrier breakdown to get to a point where we're now in 2023 talking about jabbing jives and having fun at each other at a corporate level, and that being okay from a copyright, UX, and everyone experience perspective as well. Have you seen the importance of that engagement and content? You must have. You've experienced it, right? Surely, from like being called a copywriter, it's just like a rocket. It's the only way I can like thinking about this session before we jumped on the call.
No, I have really seen the journey. Like it has dramatically changed in the right direction. Like there's still a lot of work to be done, but I still, with some, like, I think we're in a lot more of a better direction now with like how companies are realizing content is so important. And I always say, like, I really think like, you know, COVID times was like the game changer. I think when people realize that in-store presence ain't doing nothing for them, the influx in people wanting to really invest in their content teams went through the roof. Like the amount of people I would get approaching me saying like, oh, we're looking for this content, we're looking for content writer, da, 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 because so many people realize that content is so important. People need engaging content. People need content that actually helps them understand and buy into an experience. Like they need it. And if it doesn't make any sense, if there's not enough content, then that's it. Then they're not going to buy anything. This is why I say like a lot of like the British high street, for example, especially, like you could see how a lot of the bigger retailers fell, like they came crashing down as a result, because they didn't really invest enough in their digital teams and their digital infrastructure. And the content they were putting out there, their websites, it wasn't a great buying experience for people.
No.
And that's why they couldn't even survive, because they never thought about digital from before. They never thought about like, oh, they so relied on the in-store experience and like, you know, having maybe the good adverts on TV, but they never thought about the actual website. And that's why a lot of them have disappeared now.
I always think about clothing for young, like I've got a preteen daughter. She's not picking clothing from TV adverts and in-store experiences. It's all online, right? Shein, Boohoo, it's all like, you know, how obtaining that content and then, you know, your purchase journeys and all of that. That is not coming from watching EastEnders or sorry, not EastEnders, but, you know, an advert, a TV program and seeing it. It's not coming from there.
Exactly.
I think you're right about that as well, about that in store. I think, and I definitely came across it there. I actually heard these sort of phrases being used of, oh, if it doesn't land digitally, don't worry, they could always call or go into one of the stores. And that's where, like you say, COVID was like that. And I definitely think there were some companies who are a bit ignorant, like, oh, this only lasts a year. Oh, it's gone into 2 years. We need to make sure our website's better because we're losing it. And I think that really, really did shine a light of how much content and that design experience plays a part in when people go on the website and on the fashion stuff. Like I remember, never forget talking to someone who was at ASOS, and they were interviewing me for a role, and they said, what's one of the best digital experiences you've come across in recent times? I said, oh, the size fitter. And then why? And I went, because people do still go to store of an older generation because they want to make sure it looks good and develop. But when you've got that validation saying 80% bought it based on your size and build and preferences, it's like, oh, I don't have to return it. I don't have to buy. And do you know what the mad thing, not to go on the crazy tangent, was? He said they nearly stopped it. It nearly didn't get made because they were worried about offending people, which that blew my mind. Yeah, like that. But what people didn't realize was it saved them as a business so much money. So they did free returns. So if you had someone doing like, I'm going to order things in 5 different sizes of 6 different products, that's 30 things they're returning. Look at
for
me.
free. Yeah,
look at that.
And they've got the data. They have the data to be able to pull it and say, based on the size and details you've given us, 80% of people your size bought that product. Oh, great. And actually, it's not offending. It's saving time because I don't want to have to go and post it. back.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Who wants to do that? Like,
Yeah.
and this is the thing, and that is a great example about how having the right content there, the right
Yes.
features, literally improves the whole buying experience and save them loads of money. And
Yep.
this is I feel like when you take your time to think about, like, you know, having the right content as part of the experience, there's always going to be some massive benefits to business, and it's just refreshing to see more and more that businesses are seeing that, and businesses are investing in the right digital teams to actually help create those experiences.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just love as well how much research helps as well, like validate everything now, like the data we have and we can get to say this is why we do this. And going back to like you know, obviously I like started off in journalism, and you know, I wouldn't go back to journalism for that reason, because I just love that data, and things may have changed now, but I just love the fact that with my role and the work I do now in content, that data validates everything, user feedback validates everything. I can always go back and we can always say, this is what the users want. And I'm writing and creating content, and how I'm thinking about it, thinking about the structure, thinking about the tone of voice. It's all with the user in mind, their needs, and yeah, what they want.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
It's been great. And like I've definitely seen that from, because I obviously have to work with content quite a lot in what I do, and I've definitely seen a big shift in it, and also then seen the bad, and then realised the impact, and been the smug person in the room going, "Data's told you that," and tried not to be the smug person, but been the smug person. But yeah, we'll move on to a bit more of the funner stuff. So we ask this of every guest. It's a two-pronged approach. So the first one is, have you ever been to Luton?
And it's a battle he's losing. Jordan Clark! Well, Luton lead that is thoroughly
deserved. I've been to Luton Airport. I do not like that airport. I avoid it as much as I can.
I don't.
And I've been to Dunstable because my dad was living there. So that's, yeah, but yeah, Luton Airport, if I see a flight, I will pay more to go to a different airport. I'm sorry.
That was my next question. What did you think? So the airport is a no. And what about Dunstable? What did you think of Dunstable?
I just couldn't see much.
Okay.
It was just...
Not to do like a content thing and put words in your mouth. With these words in no particular order: time, land, and age. Time forgot.
Yeah.
But this is a Luton podcast, so the Luton Geeks podcast. So we do have to ask everyone.
You know?
And thus far, everyone's been to the airport.
We're going to do a bingo. We said initially we're going to do data. I'm going to do a spreadsheet after this and then have the answers, like, and show a poll. Maybe we'll do a graphic later on. But I think we should also do a bingo. And if someone says the specific words, glitter.
There you go.
Does anyone even like that airport? Or is it literally purely on
yeah, someone said to me, I'm not joking, someone, I can't remember who it was, so my wife's mum went and messaged saying, I hate Luton Airport the other day. But someone literally said to me, I can't remember who it was, they just went, oh yeah, but the airport's so good, it's so much better than other ones. And I was like, I don't know if you're just being nice because you do know I'm from Luton, because it's not. I went there in May to go Pisa, and I nearly had a breakdown just trying to get through the new system of where you see the workers behind the desk who you still have to go to drop your bag. They still weigh it. They still then check your passport. But there's a machine that you weigh it and put it on. What is that step? What is that step? And the only
bag drop.
Yeah,
auto bag drop with a human, so they've not actually saved any money because no one can use the auto bag drop.
And then like a self-service till, they have humans floating around, and then you still have to go see a human. Like, it's the most convoluted thing. And I'm not even as a product manager, just as a human being, I'm sitting there going, what the fuck is this? Like,
Let's be honest, like if we were to relate it to a digital experience, it's a poor experience. I
It
just
is a
feel
poor
like
experience.
basket
destined-
abandonment would be high.
yeah, trust me, it's destined to make you lose, not make your flight that
Yeah.
airport.
Yeah.
I've missed a flight there, and I've nearly missed another one there. Like
Oh,
I feel like it's destined to
Yeah.
make you not get your flight.
Yeah, they need an human experience overhaul, I think,
They
Right.
really do.
with their
They really
process.
do.
So the next thing we do is what grinds up our gears. So
You know what really grinds my gears?
what really, really annoys you? And I think we need to let the guests go first. I've just seen yours been on the product sheet. So Tajha, you go first and give us an example as well.
So what really grinds my gears is still being called a copywriter. A copywriter. Even worse when I'm called like, oh yeah, we just like when I'm told like, yeah, we just oh yeah, we need a copywriter on this. Yeah, could you like proofread this as well? And I'm like, do you understand what I do? Like, especially like in my role, like, and a lot of content designers, UX writers will tell you this, we tend to have to educate a lot about what we do. Because believe it or not, still as much as the digital world has like advanced, it's still not everybody has worked with like a UX writer or content designer.
No.
So you still have to do that education piece. But when you've done that education piece and you're still called a copywriter, and I'm like, do you know what a copywriter is? Because I'm not doing really what a copywriter does. So
yeah, I think that's the same as when you say you work in tech and a family member or a friend goes, "Can you fix my phone?" I think that's the same feeling. I
work in digital. Oh,
yeah.
So do you think this thing would be a good thing to buy for the home? Like it's a Nest? I don't know. I don't. I'm not going to be in your home using it. So you tell me.
I think everyone universally who works in tech feels that pain, but then you get some categories of it like you've just explained, which is the same thing. Jamie, you go next.
Yeah, this one's might be controversial because people hate this word, but documentation. And this is my phrase. It's gear grinding because I'm all for not having to be bogged down in paperwork. But if you go into a company and you don't know half the jargon, half the thing, and you say, "Oh, have you got anything?" No, it's just with that one person. Oh, so it's with one person, is it? Yeah. Okay. So what if that person's ill? What would be fucked? Brilliant. Geniuses. Have you not thought to then document your processes? And I'm talking in every aspect, like engineering. When an engineer is working with code and he's only the one who's built that, and I don't know, you're using some sort of really, really complex quoting engine, and he's the only one who knows the code. You haven't documented that. So someone's going to have to go in and unpick that. Yeah, but it's just what it is. And it's across the board. I can do so many examples. And I'm like, wow. Is it that hard just to get someone to go, I'm just going to document some of this information?
I like it when you do that and they point you to a Confluence page or a Word document and it's dated 4 years ago.
Yeah. And one viewed on Confluence says one person, and it's the person who created it. You're like, brilliant.
The person who's created it. Yeah.
No one's looked at this. No one's looked at it.
no one even knows it exists.
Yeah, like I say, I don't expect people to sit there and go, "Oh, I've got to spend 5 hours a day." Right? No. Just a bit of common sense of there is downtime, and it is going to help us long term if you have things documented. And again, it helps teams. Like you've got someone new to the team, and people aren't available as much because they're really busy to help. You've got documentation. Go. This is how we work. This is the way you write a user story. In my world, it is just basic principles. And you look at anyone who works in any industry, you do your basics right, and then that's where you then go from to then being better.
Here's our terms of reference. Like what would you?
Like I've even had an incident. I'm going to go off here, but like an illegal one. It got to a legal person, and they went, "I don't know if we're covered from this because there's nothing in our legal handbook that covers this scenario." And I was like, "But this scenario has been on a site for 3 years, so you could be sued by people because you haven't looked at your legal documentation. What is going on? I felt like I was the barrister in this scenario. It was baffling. I can go on this one. This one.
That's a good one. It's a good. Mine's really boring.
Yes, go on, Darren. Hit us.
Yeah,
what is your one?
mine's really boring. It's when an email could have been a Slack or Teams message. When someone says, "Hi, here's a thing or a link," and you're just like, you could have sent that on Teams or on Slack. And I thought that period was dead. I thought most people would just go, it's fine. We can just Teams and Slack. No, it still occurs. And I still seem to get probably one a week where it could just be a Teams message. Or worse than this, I think, Jamie, we've discussed, I'm going to elaborate, is when someone says hi and doesn't say anything else on Slack and Teams.
Don't.
There is a website. There is a website called No Hello. I don't know if you've seen it. And it basically says, don't just say hello, just literally, because I'm busy, I'll read the message. Please say what you want. It's fine.
I'm not going to get offended.
No one's going to get offended.
I don't mind it when it's like, how are you? But just hi.
And then silence.
I had the hi and sent me a link to something, which was a document I created, but that was it.
Oh wow!
Wow!
And with a wave as well.
No context at all.
And I was just like, how do I do this?
Did you send a middle finger emoji back to the wave?
I just felt like I was in a service role. I was like, what can I do for you today?
But this is. Do you think there's two types of people in this world? The people that send the hi and think that that's okay, and the people that just want to know what you want, like us lot. But there seems to be a category. There's either the hi senders or the ones that go, hi, I need this. You see what I mean?
The worst one? There's a third one. The person who sends the hi, then you might then go with a question mark, and they don't reply to you, and then 2 days later you go, sorry, I forgot what I messaged you for. That's the third scenario in this one, and I'm like, you've rattled my cages here. Like, what the hell?
It's just like, just don't waste my time. Like, time is precious.
Time is precious.
I'm not for the dilly dallying. Just get straight to the point. If you can't get straight to the point, just leave me alone.
I call it shit chat. It's not chit chat, it's shit chat. Look, you don't have to ask me how I am. I'm not going to ask you how you are. We don't converse very often. You need something from me. Just ask me what it is. Let's cut the shit chat.
That's the worst. You can tell they're like, just say, oh, hi, how are you? And you say, oh, yeah. Oh, good. Yeah, so, we need... And just like, you should just done that.
I thought of a fourth one in this world. Hey, got some interesting news or gossip. What is it? And then they don't either reply or they go, oh, actually, I can't say anything about it. Thanks for that.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm a modern day Sherlock. I'm gonna get the crumbs from what you've just told me and solve the whole case.
I'm going to spend all my time and effort with that useless information.
Yeah.
With those ones, I was like, do I need to know? If I know, do I have to keep it a secret? Because if I do, I'm shit at doing that. So don't tell me, please.
I'll let you down.
Yeah, I will let you down. So just don't message me.
You're just better off just not messaging me. Yeah. That was it.
We've just probably cut the people that we can have on our podcast in 4 now, or vlogcast in 4, because unless you're one that hates the hi, then we're in trouble. Anyway, I'm doing the intros and outros today, which it seems. So thank you very much, Tajha, for coming on. We'll release these hopefully in the autumn. The weather will probably be better then, who knows? But thank you very much for coming on. You can find us all on LinkedIn. Please feel free to connect to us, and until next time, we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you very much.